Three pieces from CIA in Wonderland. And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. The biblical inscription on the wall of the main lobby at CIA headquarters, Langley, Virginia. The ground floor. This is before Guru Leary, before the Fillmores, East and West, before Harvard or Millbrook, Acid's own private academy, before the pranksters ever set foot on the bus, before Lucy in the Sky or the hundreds of raucous tabloid headlines like Girl 5 eats LSD and goes on rampage, before flower power took to the streets, before human beings, before the hate. This is 1949, and the CIA is already going wild just thinking about LSD. There are memos full of the secret that's going to unlock the universe. They're looking for a key. Let's give them that. But the universe might be a little much for them right now. This is about who knows how many secrets. This is about choosing sides. Someone's got a Cold War to win. This much, finally, is about how the company works. A few human beings in the paranoia business can accomplish more than any outright politics of hate. And this leads to the clandestine 1950s birth of MK Ultra, a secret within a secret, the CIA's special hush-hush baby, cutting its crooked teeth on the best of everything its cloak and dagger daddy can buy. These are the days of chemical and biological abracadabra, and there must be some magic they can do with this amazing stuff from Sandoz, now that they've contracted for exclusive buying rights. And so the CIA scientists get cracking. They're not in this for the sacrament, for the fleeting glimpse into altered states of being. Russia's already one reality too many. So they're testing what they've been made to believe could be a weapon, if only they can find a reliable trigger. They're studying pharmaceutical ballistics, making it up as they go along, diagramming theoretically spectacular trick shots sure to break the will of enemy agents. The soundtrack from a cartoon training film playing over and over in some projection room above them. And the hell with any mystical doors of perception. Show them a window of opportunity instead, no matter how fogged up. If LSD proves to be inefficacious as a truth drug, we will consider its potential as anti-interrogation substance. Under its spell, our agents might be impervious to questioning. Pop a tab of acid while in the fabled enemy hands, and suddenly it's a different cartoon. That's Tweety, wide-eyed in the dark of Sylvester's furry clutches. I taught putty tat. This research gets a lot sillier, a whole lot scarier later on. For now, it's still about exhilaration. I did taught putty tat, or words to that effect. One small suitcase full of LSD could unstring every man, woman, and child in America. Either way, there's no denying the sheer adrenaline surge that always comes with knowing just enough to be dangerous. They can't seem to understand what manner of beast they're swinging around by the tail. They'd love to let go about now and walk away with their lives, but we can see the obvious problem. They're already in, way over their cartoon heads. So far, there's nothing totally out of the question. Nothing they won't think of next. Frank Olson is flying. We do not target American citizens. The nation must to a degree take it on faith that we who lead the CIA are honorable men devoted to the nation's service. Richard Helms, former CIA director. In 1953, at the Deep Creek Lodge in western Maryland, originally built as a Boy Scout camp 25 years earlier, The agency threw a get-together for its Army friends on the cutting edge of biological warfare. We don't know what kinds of stories they told around the fire, but these guys were a long way from Boy Scouts. It was going to be a harum-scarum night, and they weren't always prepared. Frank Olson, family man, lover of practical jokes, specialist in the airborne delivery of disease, was handing out his trademark exploding cigars when the room started pinwheeling unbelievably around him. A kaleidoscope turning in his head. He'd had no more than his usual 2 fingers of Cointreau, so he figured it was someone's idea of fun, someone trying to kid the kingpin of kidders. He resorted to his favorite expression, "You guys are a bunch of thespians." His distinctive way of saying he was onto them now, the joke was over. But when a general cleared his throat and announced that certain guests had been slipped a mind-altering chemical as part of a classified experiment, Olson wasn't laughing anymore. It was all he could do to navigate the dark hallways back to his room. From out of his pockets he took his unused sticks of onion gum, his packets of itching powder. He unpinned his squirting carnation, his very own Purple Heart. He stared at his ridiculous arsenal of tricks and began a night of sobbing that wouldn't quit. He'd been caught in mid-sip with a version of The Fly in the Ice Cube, and it was too late now to spit it out. He felt like that guy in the drawing on the package, smoke and lightning coming out of his ears, his eyes popping out of his reddened cartoon face. It was hard to tell if he was angry or embarrassed, and someone in the background pointing and laughing. That always seemed to be an important part of the picture, too. When Olson somehow found his frazzled way home the next day, he barely spoke with his wife, Alice. "Wait until the kids go to bed and I'll talk to you." But all he could manage out of his own bleariness even then, "I made a terrible mistake." She tried to tease it out of him, or at least tease him out of his malaise. When she smiled her most provocative smile and called him Mr. Secrets, he informed her that whoever wasn't making fun of him was trying to destroy him. And suddenly, what choice did she have? She didn't know whether to laugh or to cry. In the weeks that followed, his anxiety grew. He only wanted to sleep, but the thought of closing his eyes made him nervous. He couldn't even make it through the simplest grace before meals. Not that he felt much like eating. A bite or two was all he could ever choke down. He was nervous going out the door, nervous in his car, nervous all day at the office, where the telephone on his desk was a bomb that could go off at any time. And if Frank Olson was nervous, the CIA was nervous. If Olson was spinning further out of control, an accident waiting to happen, they had to be more than a little concerned about the inevitable pileup behind him. They gave him the name of a doctor with top-secret clearance in New York who worked with LSD under agency contract. Maybe he could bring Olson around, back to his predictable, good-natured self. And when it was Olson's turn to sign in with the waiting room receptionist, he couldn't help but notice the X-ray specs she was wearing. What a bunch of thespians. They'd been expecting him. He took out his most reliable pen and wrote his name in disappearing ink. By the time the nurse had prepared that foot-long hypodermic water pistol, he was already gone. He'd decided there was nothing anyone could do to change his mind. Frank Olson is flying, and if he ever stops, it's a long way down. He's thrown himself through the drawn blinds, the closed window of his 10th floor room at the elegant Statler Hotel. He's not thinking of terrible secrets, sweet revenge, or his footnoted place at the bottom of another page of history. This begins his moratorium on thinking. For weeks, he's had nothing but bad ideas. Poison pen notes from his own secretary, The gas jockeys, small talk, some mockery in code. The agency dropping a dime sure to lead to his imminent arrest. Everything boiling down to the sticky, obvious residue of his undoing. And so he'd show them all in the end what he could still do. Frank Olson is flying high. And if he ever stops, it won't be to reconsider the voices that keep telling him to tear up his papers, his money, to throw away his wallet, set fire to his clothes. It's a long way down. And tonight the lights of 33rd Street are burning for him. The smoke shops got his favorite brand. The all-night grocery, if he's hungry. A tavern where the regulars could make him feel right at home. He's not the kind of guy to get out much, but tonight is a different story. Frank Olson is flying, smack in the face of what will become the official version of his dying. He will have jumped or maybe fallen out of a window in New York because he suffered from chronic ulcers, and it's someone else's turn to worry now. Frank Olson is flying, and if he ever stops, someone will be working hard to make sure there's no connection between a dead man and the CIA, let alone LSD. Someone will bring his widow the late-breaking news, a bad dream in the middle of the night, and she'll wait 22 years until she wakes up to what really happened. A copy of the Washington Post at her door with its story about years of illegal CIA domestic operations. And for her, too, it's going to be a long way down. Finally, she'll know everything. Frank Olson, specialist in the airborne delivery of things insidious and nearly invisible, is goddamn flying. And if he ever stops, it's got to be a long way down to the bottom, to the sickening thud of a life falling apart this irretrievably, to the flashing lights of the squad car and the spiritless chalk outline of one more broken man on the sidewalk, all that's left to represent him. It's crazy. What in the world can push some people over the edge, the cop might say, to no one in particular? Certainly not to the widow Alice, so many unsuspecting years away from the scene of the crime. She'll have to think about it this way. Her husband knew exactly what he was doing, and he couldn't help himself. In her better dream, he's flying no matter how desperately, and she sees him firing up the trick cigar of his life right there before the lights go out. She only wishes he could be here to watch it explode, this long after it was handed over, in someone's fat, astonished face. Yeah, that's funny, Frank. I mean it this time. Funny. Frank Olson is flying, and it's a long way down. Why it almost makes sense. LSD, LBJ, FBI, CIA. Lyric from Hair, the American tribal love rock musical. Because under the cover of slapstick, the more ridiculous the better, our spooks were willing to try anything once, so easy to laugh at, to disavow if anyone ever went public. Telepathy, REM sleep teaching, sensory deprivation, hypnotically induced anxieties, tunnel vision, cluster headaches, subliminal projection, aphrodisiacs, electroshock, and psychosuggestive lobotomy, sneezing powders, stink bombs, exploding cigars, marijuana, heroin, speed diuretics, laughing gas. And could someone please tell them what's so funny about LSD? Because it was still the Cold War. It was Frostbite Falls, USA, and moose and squirrel could cut up all they wanted, as long as they found some way to diffuse the dastardly shtick of Boris and Natasha Darlink. Because Fred McMurray was riding high, the absent-minded professor who discovered flying rubber. And so what's next, after his souped-up jalopy, beyond the sheer flubber hijinks and yucks? Because the company's still looking for the flimsiest practical application. Maybe a little LSD in Castro's scuba diving mouthpiece. Some itching powder in his wetsuit would be enough to drive him crazy, cause him to go down for good. Because no one's coloring with a full box of crayons, no one's staying inside the lines anymore. And this is the best they've come up with so far at the Central Intelligence Agency. Because finally, LSD was a whisper away from people in the streets, and who knew what those unsuspecting idiots would do when it got there? Because they were barely out of the narcotic dark of the 50s. Because they'd dance and dance, but never give the spooks their cockeyed due. The linguistic invention of tripping. Because the agency knew, LSD or no, the KGB demanded getting back to, the Mafia and the Kennedys and Castro again, LBJ and maybe Elvis, Vietnam's opium highway, another nickel's worth of dictator to bury or embrace. Because what the hell? Acid might yet work its confusing magic to CIA advantage. If only they'd give up quietly, let it go. Because the world wasn't about to change overnight. Why not? Let the damn sunshine in.